Monk time today, and I'm just going to come out and say it. I really like the Monk class, always have. It's a martial class, which means it's relatively simple to play, but it still gives you a ton of options and these fun, unique, non-magical game mechanics that you really don't get access to anywhere else. And yet, for some reason, it's always been seen, rightly or wrongly, as something of a wicked stepchild among the other martial classes. It can't hit a million times per turn like a fighter can. It doesn't have a ton of hit points like a barbarian. It doesn't have spellcasting like a paladin. So what does it have going for it? Of probably all the classes in the game, the Monk is the one class that I have heard the most positive noises about with the launch of the 2024 Player's Handbook. People seem genuinely excited about this one, and I'm excited to find out why that is, so let's build one. So who are we going to build? Well, you think Monk, you think fighting with your fists, you think swift movements, you think stillness of mind, you think wisdom, and honestly, there are tons of examples of monk-like characters in fiction that I could pick from for our video today. But honestly speaking, there really was only ever going to be one option for me when it came to building a monk. We are going with Avatar. No, not that version of Avatar. Not that version either. Definitely not that one. No, we are going with this one. Legend of Korra. Why? Well, there's a couple of reasons, some based on game mechanics and some just on my own preferences. So for those of you who don't know the world of Avatar or need a refresher, in this fictional universe, the Avatar is a master of the 4 key magical elements: earth, fire, water, and air. Now, D&D contains a lot of spells. Seriously, a lot. And while it's easy for us to find spells within D&D which act as appropriate stand-ins for what we see from firebending or waterbending or earthbending, airbending is, it's not exactly absent from the game. There's definitely air spells, but just look at Aang here. Look at what he is doing. There is nothing in D&D that even comes close to allowing this from a game mechanics point of view. Whereas in The Legend of Korra, well, Avatar Korra is shown to be an excellent waterbender, an excellent earthbender, an excellent firebender, but she seriously struggles with airbending, meaning that she doesn't do it very often, especially at the beginning of the series. Perfect. So that's the mechanics side of things taken care of, but speaking selfishly for a moment, and I know that this is not a popular opinion and it's bound to get me a lot of mud thrown at me in the comments, but I don't know, I've always preferred the character of Korra to that of Aang. Don't get me wrong, Avatar The Last Airbender is unquestionably a better show than The Legend of Korra. It has amazing story, incredible characters, Toph, Princess Azula, Uncle Iroh, amazing world building, really satisfying conclusion, 10 out of 10, incredible show. But I would argue a lot of that show's heights happen almost in spite of Aang and not because of him, because for me, Korra is just a more interesting character. She loses a lot, she fails a lot, she starts the series being unable to airbend and tap into her avatar state because she is too hot-headed and impulsive. She has flaws, and her battle over those internal flaws is almost as important to the show as her battle over the external villain of the day that she's facing. For me, that's just an interesting character, and that's why we're building Korra today. Comment below if you disagree. So as always in these videos, the rules here are simple. We're going to be creating Korra using both the newly launched 2024 edition of Dungeons & Dragons and again using the 2014 rules. Where possible, we will attempt to build these characters as close to one another as possible, making the same choices, taking the same feats, and utilizing the same stat spreads. Doing this allows us to more directly compare the end results to each other to decide which version of D&D is truly the best for creating monks like Korra. So straight out of the gate, both versions start very similarly. We get the choice of 2 proficiencies, and we're going to go with acrobatics for obvious reasons, and stealth because she's always sneaking about. She also gets proficiency in artisan's tools. I mean, we don't really see Korra doing much of any of these things, so I'm just going to give her proficiency in brewer's supplies. It's a bit random, but hey, she does look like a girl that you could go drinking with. And the similarities between the 2 versions don't really stop here, so both versions of the game give us unarmored defense, giving us improved defense when we're not wearing armor, no problem there. Korra definitely does not wear armor. Both also give us monk's focus or key points, which are special points that allow us to perform extra abilities each turn. We get flurry of blows, patient defense, step of the wind, and from level 5, stunning strike. One key difference here is that in the latest version of the game, you can actually regain all expended focus points when you are rolling initiative, and you can do this once per long rest, and that's amazing. But otherwise, both versions are pretty similar here, with the number of points that you get scaling up as you level. More similarities, well, both versions let us add a dice and use our dexterity score when we are fighting unarmed. Both let us punch ghosts from level 6, making our attacks magical. Both versions let us deflect missiles, reducing damage caused by incoming projectiles. Both give us 2 attacks per attack action at level 5. Both let us move incredibly fast, even letting us run across vertical surfaces or across water. Both give us the evasion trait that lets us reduce our damage from dex saves to 0 if you make the save, and both allows us to reduce full damage when we're falling from great heights. So far, so similar.
Fatality.
In the 2014 version of the game, you could use an action to end the charmed or frightened condition on yourself. I'm not sure why they removed this feature. I thought it was pretty cool, but in the long run, it's a minor thing. So for feats, in both versions of the game, we're going to be choosing the Crusher feat at level 4, which lets us push enemies around when we're punching them, and we get advantage on attack rolls when we score a crit. And we get Skill Expert with an additional proficiency in Intimidation. I mean, she is the avatar after all, that's pretty intimidating, and she gets an expertise in Acrobatics because she's the avatar. The skill points here are going to go into Constitution and Dexterity. Moving on, in both cases, we're going to go for the Acolyte background. I mean, she was trained in a temple, it makes sense. She gets proficiencies in Insight and Religion because of this, and in the 2024 version, she also gets the Magic Initiate feat that I'm going to use to give myself the most avatar-seeming spells which are available to me from the available list. Now, sadly, it is the Cleric list that we have to choose from here, so our options are kind of limited. I really wish we had access to the Druid spell list here, but I mean, we do get Sacred Flame, we get Guidance, we get Create or Destroy Water. It's not terrible. We also get a proficiency in Calligrapher's Tool, so very nice. In both cases of the game, we are human. In both cases, this gives us yet another proficiency. We're going to go with Survival, and in both cases, we get another additional feat. That's 4 now, if you're keeping count, which for simplicity's sake, we're going to put into Tough, because Korra is very tough. Now, by the time we've gone through all of the point buy process, you can see that this is what we are left with. Identical in both cases. You can see Korra is pretty strong, she's very tanky, she's very dexy, she's not very clever, she's pretty wise but could be wiser, and she is average when it comes to her people skills. Pretty accurate, I think. And that's it. As you can see, both versions of Korra are pretty much identical. There's a few bits and pieces that are different here and there, but yeah, I've no idea what all the fuss was about, really. I mean, I can only assume it's because, oh, I forgot to choose a subclass. Wait 1 second. Yeah, that's pretty different, isn't it? So, okay, let's strap in now, because this is going to get crazy. So the Warrior of the Elements subclass, which is obviously what we're going to go for here, has been completely redesigned for the 2024 edition. So much so that comparing them directly to each other is almost impossible. But if I were to summarize all of these changes in just one word, it would be this: simplicity. The 2024 edition of the game is just easier to understand, and it's easier to work with, and it gives you more options. So to summarize, at the start of your turn as a free action, you can spend a focus point now to gain elemental power for 10 minutes, and during this time, your attacks deal additional elemental power. You choose the element, and the reach of those attacks is increased by 10 feet. Alternatively, you can spend 2 focus points to make a magical elemental explosion, for want of a better word, and you also know the new elementalism cantrip, which is kind of like druidcraft or thaumaturgy, but with an elemental flavor. So that's a lot of options straight away. I mean, we have a range option, we have a fluffy role-playing option, and we have an improved melee option. They are all easy to understand, they are all easy to use, they all come either for free or at the low price of just 1 focus point. Lots of options, great stuff. My only complaint here, and this really is me nitpicking, is that the damage types you choose from, acid, cold, fire, lightning, thunder, they don't really marry very well with our avatar theming. You know, you can argue, okay, cold goes with water, fine. Fire, obviously that's fire, but airbending? Thunder, I guess? Earthbending? Acid? It's a stretch, and it does weaken the end results in terms of the accuracy of portrayal. Remember, that is what we're going for here. But if we compare this subclass to the 2014 version, all of these complaints just fly out of the window because the 2014 version is just laughably bad. We get to choose 3 different abilities from a list of options that we can choose, and we have them available to us at all times. They're basically spells, for want of a better word. So for the cost of 2 key points, you can, for example, cast Water Whip, which is like a damage-dealing Shape Water cantrip, or you get Sweeping Cinder Strike that lets you cast the Burning Hand spells, Fist of Unbroken Air, and so on and so on. They do feel a little bit more Avatar themed. I mean, they definitely fit better in terms of representing Korra on the tabletop, but in terms of battlefield utility and use in the game, yeah, extremely underwhelming. So much so, in fact, that I have no hesitation in saying that this 2024 version of Korra is substantially better than the 2014 version. For once, the internet was right. Let's all rejoice and roll up a monk character today because it is going right here on our scale of power. Goodness me, this looks like a fun subclass to play. And by the way, look at this. Just look at this. We are 5 classes in so far, and every single one of the classes we've looked at is better than the 2014 edition. Is anything going to go on this side of the scale? Well, let's find out next week when we are going to be taking on Rogue. Until then, if you've enjoyed this video, then don't forget to give it a thumbs up, comment below if you think I've made mistakes anywhere. Or would you have done things differently? Tell me all the different ways that I am wrong for saying that Aang is a boring character. But until then, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the week wherever you are. I do hope that you take care and tune in next week.